now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud host of the Africa Impact Matters series podcast. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. 8 minutes after 6, good evening. Welcome to the program. I'm Stephen Grootes. A packed show, particularly the full hour. I'm looking forward to our Shapeshifter tonight, Thembani Bukula, the chair of NERSA, right at the intersection of all of the electricity transitions. But before then, really great numbers coming out of Tiger Brands. Their CEO, Tjaart Kruger, already on hold, waiting to talk to you. We'll speak to Billy Tom. He's the president of NAMSA, also CEO of Isuzu. He's been at the big opening of a new metal stamping facility in Grootes. That's going to help the local supply chain when it comes to cars. The National Treasury unveiling a new infrastructure bond today. Duncan Petersen is the Director General there. It follows the medium-term budget policy statement. Looking forward to the conversation with him in about 15 minutes' time as well. Bukala promising innovation to keep you coming to shopping malls. I've got to tell you, I know what would make me go to a shopping mall, and it's very simple. It doesn't even have to be free parking. It just has to be parking that works. I went to a big shopping mall. I'll name and shame. It was Cresta. They didn't have a parking app at all. None of the ones that you can use were available. I was horrified. What would make you go to a shopping mall this Christmas? And please, don't say it's the train for the kids. I mean, maybe it is. But what would make you go to a shopping mall? 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and voice notes on 072 702 1702. We'll also check in with progress being made at the port of Durban. There's a lot going on there. It does seem that there is some progress.
The Money Show
With Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
and DSTV channel 856.
10 after 6, or Tiger Brands reporting their revenue up by nearly 3% in the year to the end of September. Group operating income up by 35%. Operating profit from milling and baking jumped 27%. The upshot of all of this is a special dividend, and dare I forget, they're also launching a new logo. Tjaart Kruger is the CEO at Tiger Brands. Tjaart, good evening. Good to talk to you. You've clearly had a strong year. What pushed your operating income up so strongly? What made the difference for you as a group this year?
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for talking to us. I think the biggest contributor to the operating margin going up is us getting our price points right and getting our cost structures right. So getting our price points right to help our volume growth, which obviously gives you much better efficiencies through your factories. And then all the continuous improvement programs that we've put in place over the last 2 years take the cost out of the supply chain, and that enables you to deliver a profit like we have.
I mean, in your bakeries, you increased your margins, and you say that was because of factory efficiencies. That you must have made some big changes, and at some point, you sort of run out of efficiencies to make.
Yeah, look, in bakeries, the particular issue is we came off a low base because the bakeries was probably not performing at all 2 years ago. So that helps. But in bakeries, in all the businesses, but in bakeries in particular, efficiencies is a big driver of your profitability. The number of kilometers you drive to deliver bread, the number of trucks you have delivering bread is huge. And if you don't run that efficiently, you lose the plot very quickly. And doing the opposite actually give you these benefits that we can see.
You talk about getting your pricing right, and we've actually seen some food price deflation this year. Has that made it harder?
Look, our stated strategy and our purpose is that we want to be relevant to our consumers. We've got great brands, we've got great businesses. The consumers want our products, but if we are 20-30% more expensive than alternatives, then we're going to lose out, and we know that. And we really have to make ourselves relevant, and we must make it easy for our consumers to decide to buy our products. To do that, we must have the right price. We must have the right promotional activity, and we must be able to play well in combos and those type of things. So you can only do that if you become more efficient. So we've taken a lot of costs out of the organization. We've looked at things like moving from glass to PET. We've reformulated formulas. Everything consumer driven, of course. We will never put the inferior product in front of our consumers. But all those things collectively, look at the supply chain. We took a lot of cost out of distribution across the organization, and all those things added up to the the ability then to get to a price point where you can be competitive at the right margin.
I mean, being competitive is everything. And I noticed that actually in fizzy drinks, I suppose technically they're called carbonated beverages, it looked like you actually had to discount some products. Is there tough competition in fizzy drinks at the moment?
We're not. CSDs is what we call it, carbonated soft drinks. That's the two big guys, and there is a bit of a price war there, I think. We're not directly competing with them, but we've got Energate and Oros, and obviously there's a bit of an overflow. If those products become more affordable, consumers will buy that rather than our Oros or Energate. We've seen a bit of that, so we did experience that, but we've got a few programs that we've put in place. Obviously, we must be quite vigilant with our pricing. We've got promotional activity. We've got marketing campaigns in both of those products. And the last couple of months, we saw some comeback. But that market is very competitive.
And the new logo, still a tiger. I was very pleased to see, Tjaart. It's black. It uses fewer colors. I don't know if you save on printing costs. What drove the change?
Stephen, it's a big compliment to you to pick up that it saves you costs, because that is a big driver. Fewer colors, less cost. We put that on the back of every product that we sell. That's millions and millions of products. But that's not the driver, the only driver for this. Our view is, and we are Tiger Brands, that's what we are. We are proudly Tiger. We've got a history that's 100 years old. We're proud of that 100 years. But we do feel we've turned the corner. And we do need to futuristic this almost and really modernize this brand. That brand, as you see, means a lot of stuff. It represents a whole value chain. You'll see if you saw the presentation, the chin of that tiger is the bottom bit of a Mrs. Ball's container. The ears are the same as the Black Cat logo. So it really represents our whole value chain, and it really is modern. It's quite assertive. It's going for growth, and it's futuristic. So we just think it's the right time now to get the organization to really focus on the future and get our consumers and all the role players in our business to really join this journey with us.
Tjaart, thank you very much. I mean, it's assertive, but it sounds like your tiger is purring as well. Tjaart Kruger, thanks very much indeed, the CEO at Tiger Brands.
The Money Show on 702.
Monday to Friday, 6 to 8 p.m.
Well, the opening today of a 740 million rand VLS manufacturing metal stamping facility in Grootes. Billy Tom is the president and CEO of Isuzu Motors South Africa, also the current president of the National Association of Automobile Manufacturers of South Africa. Billy, good evening. Good to talk to you again. We keep hearing about fears that our car industry can't compete with other players. How important is this investment in our local industry and the local supply chain?
Stephen, very good evening, and good evening to the listeners. I must correct one thing. I'm now the former president of NERSA. I stepped down a week ago.
My mistake.
Yes, no. You're not up to date. I'll update you. Stephen, this is quite important for us. I mean, the industry, yes, is facing enormous challenges. There is a lot of things being said about the industry, but I think each and every industry goes through turbulence in one way or the other. But I think what's key for us is to invest for the future. I mean, what some people say, investing ahead of the curve, and that's what we're doing here. But also, I mean, we've come through a tough period where we've had to relook at our business and do things that bulletproof us going into the future. Like, for instance, the volatile prices of containers. So where we've got an opportunity to do things local, we need to do them local for our stability.
Did government play a big role in this? I mean, it's an important plant, it's important to supply chains. There's a lot of competition from other countries when it comes to car manufacturer. I would presume the DTIC might have been involved.
Stephen, I'm going to take a longer shot in answering your question because to me, this is a combination of industry as well as government working together. If you think of the auto industry, I mean, our North Star is what we call SEM 2035, which is the auto industry master plan. SEM 2035 talks about increasing the number of people employed, but it also talks about increasing the local content. And then secondly, you've got the Industry Transformation Fund. I mean, this fund has been set up by the 7 OEMs, and we contribute money every year towards it. But that fund makes it possible for you to invest in local manufacturing, and that's what we've done. I mean, we've received funding from AITF, we've received funding from government via IDC. The Black Industrialist funding played a role, as well as one of the banks, and then ourselves as Isuzu played a role, and then that resulted in the 740 million investment.
We keep hearing that Chinese car manufacturing capacity is, literally too big for the Chinese market. They've had to shut some of it down, particularly for electric cars. Do you believe, Billy, when I've spoken to you in the past, you've been very optimistic we'll keep a car industry here. Clearly, you still believe that.
Stephen, I clearly believe it. I'm optimistic about the continent. To me, I don't only look at the SA industry alone, I look at the African automotive industry. With the free trade agreement coming into play, to me, there is a huge opportunity in the marketplace. And I see the Chinese as almost like an interrupter. It's a big challenge, but we are automotives in Africa. We understand the African conditions, and I think we're fairly competitive. We challenge ourselves. If I talk of Isuzu as an automotive, we benchmark against the likes of Thailand to ensure that our costs are in line. We visit Japan from time to time, and if you look at the investment we've made, it's bringing a lot of stability, because instead of importing some of panels from overseas with a rand that's volatile and the shipping prices, we're now going to manufacture those locally, which brings stability and makes us more competitive. But most importantly, Stephen, it's also reducing your carbon footprint, because if we procure those locally, we do not emit carbons, but also we employ people. If you look at this setup, we are adding 52 well-paying jobs as well. That talks to reducing unemployment.
Billy Tom, thank you. President CEO of Isuzu Motors South Africa and a past president of NERSA.
702. Stephen is on X.
At Stephen Grootes.
20 after 6, the National Treasury sending some of its top people to a meeting today with fixed income investors. It's the launch of the National Treasury's first infrastructure and development finance bond. The Director General in the National Treasury is Dr. Duncan Peters. Duncan, good evening. How did it go today? How's this process working?
Good evening, Stephen, to you and your listeners, and thanks for having me. Look, perhaps just to take a step back, as you know, in last year's MTBPS, we said that one of the pillars of the infrastructure reform agenda is going to be to introduce innovative financing instruments, work on the credit guarantee vehicle to de-risk private sector participation in transmission infrastructure development is well underway with our partners, the IFC and the World Bank. And another important feature of that reform process was issuing dedicated infrastructure bonds. So the 2026 budget next year will, for the first time, show our borrowing specifically for infrastructure. And we are raising dedicated infrastructure bonds in order to finance the budget facility for infrastructure windows, which we now have 4 of every year, up from 1 per year last year. So it's part of the broader reform agenda that's aimed at driving growth through catalyzing greater infrastructure investment.
We've seen a sort of quite a few bits of good news. I'm sure you noticed, Duncan. The medium-term budget policy statement was a big part of that. I would imagine there might be a little bit more faith now in our government to get strong interest in something like this.
Yes, absolutely. And look, if you look at the response that we've seen from the investor community, that's been quite positive as well. And I think that's important, because what we wanted to do was to be able to create a listed instrument that asset managers, banks and others can invest in if they wanted dedicated exposure to public infrastructure projects. And so there's clearly quite a bit of interest here. And ultimately, the goal is to build a dedicated new infrastructure-based asset class. So over time, as more and more budget facility for infrastructure windows are finalized, and as I said earlier, we have 4 per year, the projects coming through those will be ring-fenced on the budget, and then we will leverage these infrastructure and development bonds to raise dedicated financing for those projects.
We saw our credit rating being upgraded by S&P Global. Obviously, things seem to be moving in the right direction. What are you doing to keep that momentum going?
Yeah, so obviously the next stop is the budget in February next year. But to make the obvious point that this work has been a number of years in the making. We've been running primary surpluses as a government for the last 3 years. This is our 3rd year in a row. And it's really only when revenue exceeds non-interest expenditure for a consecutive number of years and those primary surpluses are growing, it's only then when you can really achieve what we've achieved this year, which is a peak in our debt to GDP ratio. And from next year onwards, it'll start coming down. So in the budget next year, we want to continue with prudent management of the fiscal accounts, demonstrating a clear commitment to fiscal sustainability. That, of course, translates into lower interest rates across the economy, and we've already seen that with our bond yields coming down around 250 basis points over the last few months. That translates into lower cost of capital for businesses to invest and better environment for households to be able to spend. So the momentum has to continue in the budget and the MTBPS next year as we move towards restoring fiscal credibility that was lost in the period prior to COVID.
Director General of the National Treasury, Dr. Duncan Peterson, really appreciate the time. Thank you. 25 after 6.
The Money Show.
The Markets.
Chris Stewart's Portfolio Manager at 91. Chris, good evening. Quite a strong update, I thought, from Tiger Brands. Their CEO is very bullish.
Yeah, good evening, Stephen. Yeah, a pretty strong set of numbers from Tiger Brands, beating on all metrics other than revenue. The revenue line was okay, but gross profit margin was good. Operating margin was even better. Cash flow was good. Balance looks excellent. Special dividend was bigger than expected. Final dividend was bigger than expected. And indications of more to come, and a pretty front-footed outlook statement as well, all conspiring to drive the share up about 7% on the day, despite the fact that Tigers has been in strong recovery mode for quite some time.
Yeah. And Vukile, I mean, their shopping centres in South Africa seem to be doing quite well. Their shopping centres in Portugal and Spain are doing quite nicely as well.
Yeah. Again, another strong update. Net operating income in their SA business growing just into the double digits, and with good cost control. Solar installations reducing their diesel consumption and reducing their electricity costs. Driving some nice margin expansion there. Generally speaking, growing their distribution to shareholders by more than it was anticipated, and then guiding that their full year numbers will also be a little bit better than the market was looking for. So, pretty strong from Vukile, and again, I think well received by the market.
It's so interesting how many companies like Vukile have spent quite a lot of money on solar installations over the last couple of years, and now they're beginning to really see the results. And of course, Eskom encourages it because their prices are always much higher than inflation.
Yeah, I mean, initially it was an investment to keep the shopping centres open and to make sure the tenants could carry on trading. Now that electricity supply has normalised somewhat, it's much more an investment in saving costs, and that investment in saving costs is starting to pay serious dividends for these businesses.
There's a budget in the UK today from Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer there. Looks like there's going to be higher taxes, and of course Britain's fiscal situation is very constrained.
Yeah, I mean, it's tempting to poke a finger at the ponds on the back of this one. We might not have been able to agree our budget the first time around, but at least we kept it a secret. with the UK budget having been leaked about an hour before it was due to be presented. We saw most of the impact on the major financial indicators before the budget itself was actually delivered. And, with a lot of fear and trepidation going into this budget, I think the macro response from the perspective of inflation expectations in the UK economy, performance of the sterling on the day, performance of long-term bond yields in the UK in particular rallying on the day means that, some degree of fiscal stability, I think, achieved, as you indicate, at the expense of increased tax, particularly back-end loaded increases in taxation, which aren't going to be particularly popular. But I guess it was bitter medicine that needs to be swallowed in the UK economy right now.
Chris Stewart, thank you. Portfolio manager at 91. We'll speak to Vukile in the next 10 minutes or so. Just gone 6:30 on The Money Show.
WhatsApp Stephen
On 072
702
1702.
23 minutes now to 7, the time I asked you. What would keep you shopping? Why would you go? What would make you go to shopping centres this Christmas? For me, it's all about doing something about the parking, but maybe some more constructive thoughts.
Hi Stephen, how's it going? I think what would make me go to a particular shopping centre is probably the lack of car washes in a car park. I feel like I don't need to be harassed to have my car washed or to park in a particular space, especially if I am paying for parking anyway. It's Nazim in Johannesburg.
Nazim, thank you. Yeah, I've had that too. And I get the hustle, but there are times you're like, I just want to park. All right, your thoughts. What would keep you shocking? Shocking. What would keep you shocking? What would make you shop? What will keep you going to a shopping mall, he says. 22 minutes to 7.
The Money Show.
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
And DSTV channel 856.
18 minutes to 7, the time, with the Vukile Property Fund reporting its net operating income for its properties in South Africa. They're up by 10%. It does seem that more people are going to shopping malls. Spain and Portugal, their gross rental property income up by 8.2%. This is for the 6 months to the end of September. Lawrence Rapp is the CEO at Vukile Property. Lawrence, good evening. You're seeing a big increase in trading density in South Africa. Sales per square meter in your township malls, it's up 7%. In commuter malls, it's up nearly 7%. That's quite strong growth. What's driving that?
Stephen, thank you. Really, I think it's a combination of a few factors. I think certainly number one is the macroeconomic environment. Certainly many of the headwinds that we had before have now become tailwinds. I think lower interest rates, a bit more consumer confidence certainly gets more people shopping. But I think there are a lot of sort of internal issues that we've been driving to make our shopping centres more attractive. We are investing a lot of money in understanding the consumers in the markets that we're in, and driving a lot more promotional activities to encourage people to come into the malls, to make sure that our malls are not only dominant, but the preferred malls that they go to. So I think it's a combination of sort of having a very strong operating platform, dominant malls, and then we're getting the benefit also of those tailwinds in terms of a more positive macroeconomic environment.
You talk about innovation for customers in shopping centres. I mean, what changes do you think are going to come? There's so many different ways for people to get things now. And I mean, to get through and out of a parking boom, Lawrence, in some cases will be enough to keep me at home. What innovations work to get people to come to a mall?
Sure. I think, number one, Stephen, one's got to look at the market in South Africa that we're serving. Many of our customers don't arrive in their own cars. They arrive either by foot or by taxi. So it's a very different market to, paying for parking. I heard the clip earlier about being harassed by, people wanting to wash your car. Our malls are different. They're township and rural malls. And, our customers tend to come differently. They shop more frequently, although in smaller basket sizes. So really what we are trying to do is get to the heart of the community, make sure that our centres are embedded in the communities. The community sees it not just simply as a place to shop, but a place that understands their needs, their dreams, their aspirations, and that we can meet those needs. I'll just give you one example. We recently ran a promotion across many of our centres across the country, a Diski football fan promotion with the legendary Dr. Kamalo. We saw growth in footfall in excess of 20% on the days the promotions ran relative to the prior day, the same day in the prior year. So it's about talking to your community and understanding them. If I look at our Spanish business, which is a very different demographic, interestingly, in Spain, you don't pay for parking at shopping centres. It's free parking is the norm. But there we're sort of using a lot of loyalty schemes. We're using a lot of AI stuff currently in pilot to understand customers and their touch points, what they're looking for. So I think there is sort of a constant desire on our side to sort of really see how we can understand the consumer and meet their needs. And something we talk about very often in the business is the nature of retail will change over time. It has changed over time. But people always need to buy things. They need to experience things. They need to socialize and interact. And we believe that shopping centers are the ideal venue for those things to take place. And it's therefore up to us to understand those needs and make sure we are able to provide centers to fulfill the customers' needs in those areas.
In terms of the types of shops in your malls that are bringing in revenue, so I noticed bottle stores are up 16%. That's extraordinary. Cell phones up 12%. But home stuff is down and electronics are down. Are these longer term trends? I mean, I realize that, the supermarkets have brought in, basically almost a bottle store war in some ways. But are these longer term trends in your malls?
Yes and no. I think in one respect, they are coming off high bases. Those two categories did particularly well during COVID. So the bases were high. And that is sort of why the growth is perhaps lower. But I think also, as durable items, durables tend to suffer more when the economy is not strong. So even though we have spoken about some green shoots and tailwinds coming through, the consumer has still been under pressure. So you will find that spend will go more towards FMCG and semi-durables, whereas durables will sort of be the item that will sort of lag in a more difficult economic environment. With interest rates coming down, you may find that those items do start becoming more in demand. But also I think we have seen a lot of consolidation in those sectors. So you'll forgive me for giving a typical economist answer of sort of, on one hand and the other. But I think, I think it's probably typical of where the economic cycle is. And I think we may see some better growth in those areas going forward if the consumer does feel more emboldened and has more money due to low interest rates.
We've got 30 seconds left, but you're in the process of buying 50% of a big mall in Chatsworth and Durban. I presume you see a lot of potential there.
Most definitely. I think it's a cracker of a center. We think that there are more efficiencies that we can extract from it in terms of solar PV and maybe just bringing our more focused management approach. So yes, we are very upbeat about that purchase and think it will add very nicely to our portfolio overall.
Lawrence Rapp, thanks so much. CEO Bukala Property. It's 12 minutes now to 7 o'clock.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud host of the Africa Impact Matters series podcast. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
10 minutes now to 7 the time. Well, still interested in what will bring you to a shopping centre. 072-702-1702. An interesting piece in MoneyWeb today, looking at the progress the Port of Durban is making in improving itself, and in particular just getting goods through more quickly. It does seem there's more investment in cranes. There seems to be improvements by the Border Management Agency as well. Devlin Naidu is from the Southern African Association of Freight Forwarders. He's the executive for SARS and other government agencies there. Devlin, good evening. I mean, we all remember that sort of moment when Durban was rated as the worst port in the world. It was a very contested poll. Are you seeing some changes since then?
Good evening, Stephen, and good evening to your listeners. Most definitely, we're seeing a vast improvement. And I think before anything else, we just want to acknowledge the World Bank's Performance Index. Whilst it is a useful benchmark, I think it's important to clarify that ranking, as you rightfully mentioned earlier, largely contested, but it was predominantly based on the delays at out anchorage. And that, to clarify for the listeners, is the time before the vessels actually enter the port. So it wasn't a direct reflection necessarily of the core terminal operations themselves. I think so, therefore, the picture was somewhat or very much unidimensional. So I think port efficiency, we're seeing significant improvements, but in that there's a multi-layered logistics network, the transactional layer, the entity layer, the regulatory layer. And of course, when you look deeper, there are many components within the logistics layer, specifically the ports environment, marine access, landside logistics, operator performance, and of course, national supply chain factors that impact the overall final measurement. But yes, Stephen, we are seeing a significant improvement.
Who do you hold responsible for the improvement, Devlin? Who do you think's sort of done well? I mean, clearly lots of people are working together as well, and that's very important in this.
Absolutely. So look, I think it's just not a single approach. There's success has many owners, and there's been a collaboration between the private sector and Transnet. But again, we must commend the leadership of Transnet, being very objective, looking at the targets that were set versus the performance. I think if we cast our minds a year back when we had significant delays, and then more recently, of course, the release of the report, it's not easy working with such sort of feedback and still trying to keep wits about oneself in terms of focusing on the target and delivering the excellent results. So I think it's been a combination of efforts between the carriers on the water side, the logistics service providers, Transnet themselves, of course, and indeed a very strong public-private partnership effort in getting this performance to stabilize and improve as we are seeing currently, yes.
The private operator, International Container Terminal Services Incorporated, they now will be running Pier 2, the sort of competition from Maersk, the competing bid, that's fallen away for various reasons. I mean, I would presume they'll bring capital to this, so there'll be more cranes and things like that. And, I mean, are you expecting the changes that we've seen, the improvements that we've seen, to gather a bit more momentum to actually pick up?
So I think if we look at the last few months, or let's call it the last year, there have been a significant number of deployments across various aspects of the port operation, including new equipment. Prior to the ICTSI coming on board, Transnet have procured new ship-to-shore cranes, rubber-tied gantries, and that has significantly contributed to an improvement in reliability and productivity. There's also been an increase in the maintenance discipline in its current form. There's tightened maintenance cycles, there's improved parts availability, and again, not to cast a shadow on the success, but if we cast our minds a couple of years back, during the era of state capture, unfortunately, the OEM equipment procured was not very reliable, evidently, from the performance of the port, consistent breakdowns, and I think that's changed quite nicely now, where the equipment procured is fit for purpose. It's from OEMs that have demonstrated capacity around some of the best performing ports in the world. And I think, Transnet on their own strength are functioning relatively well. The fact that ICTSI is coming on board and the fact that they also have a demonstrated history of excellent performance and turning around port operations will definitely strengthen, I believe, based on their demonstrated history. Of course, the statement is made that they would continue the good work that is currently in progress.
And the other ports, Devlin, I mean, there was a time when Cape Town seemed to be battling as well. Are there any improvements coming from there?
Yeah, so I think on the back of a stellar citrus season and deciduous season as well, there's been significant throughput through the Port of Cape Town and also significant improvements. I recall there's been also the deployment of straddle carriers to the Port of Cape Town because, again, just based on the design of the Port of Cape Town, that's equipment that's fit for purpose. So the progress that we're seeing in Durban, we're also seeing it across, all ports across the country, on the container side, Cape Town, PE, Kruger as well. So I think we're on a very positive trajectory. And again, I think it's a partnership effort on all fronts.
Devlin Naidu, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. From the Southern African Association of Freight Forwarders, the executive there for SARS and other government agencies.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
Well, I've expressed myself about parking in shopping centres. What would it get you into a shopping centre this Christmas?
Hi, Stephen. So what makes me go to malls, because I actually don't like shopping, is activities. So if they have like a night market or they have a thrift shop market like at Brooklyn Mall, or if they have something like go-karting, ice skating, movies, carnivals, that sort of thing. So it's more activities rather than shopping that attracts me to a mall.
Yeah, a market's also a good thing. Some malls have done that well. Some have messed that up comprehensively. We all know who I'm talking about if you live in Joburg. And so I think that's a good idea. I do like the idea of events, and sometimes there are plenty of people who'll come and see someone. Look at the success of the sort of Dr. Kamalo promotion that they had. I do think, though, that some of the fundamental stuff just needs to work. And I'll go to a mall if I know everything there will work. I think that also makes really a very big difference.
702 with Stephen Grootes.
Email him on stephen@702.co.za.
Various rumblings, whispers, suggestions, thoughts, reporting of on international wire services today that that South Africa may not be invited to the next meeting of the G20 in the United States. Now, as I understand it, the way it works is the US, even though they're currently the president of the G20, can't kick us out. Decisions on who belongs and who doesn't have to be taken by consensus. They can make it difficult for us to come, so they can say no one's welcome, we won't issue visas, things like that. They could do that. Although I have to say, I think it would be a big move to say to President Ramaphosa, you're not welcome in the United States of America. I think that could be quite a move. I mean, just imagine if we were say to Trump, we completely and utterly deny you entry. I mean, how would he react to that? It just seems to me so, I was looking for the right word. I think there are two. The one is childish, just so childish. Take your tantrum. Just take it back to the golf course. And the second, I think, would have to be that it's just simple bullying. It's also immature. I mean, I could go on. There are other words. But we don't like what you did, therefore you can't come to the next party. That's not how you win an argument. If you want to win an argument, you have to engage. And this, I kind of feel, is something the Trump administration has done very badly. If you want the rest of the world to be like you, you can either just conquer them, very hard to do, or you can change their minds. You're not even bothering to change our minds. You're just closing the door in our face. And is that going to change our mind in your favor? Not a chance. You're at The Money Show, 7 o'clock.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud host of the Africa Impact Matters series podcast. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. 8 minutes after 7. Plenty to come in the next little while. We'll speak to Graham Codrington with Business Unusual. He's been at the Dubai Futures Forum. Quite a lot going on, and in fact, some very interesting thoughts coming out of that. Wendy Nola, your consumer ninja, looking at car dealerships and cars again, just coming into sort of Wendy's focus, quite something. And then your Shapeshifter tonight. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Thembani Bukula is the chair of the National Energy Regulator of South Africa. He's stuck in the middle of all of these electricity transitions. He's agreed to take some questions on that. We'll also talk a little bit about him if we get time. What do you do for fun? That kind of thing. So looking forward to that conversation. Not very often, actually, we get the chair of a regulator as a shapeshifter. But I remember reporting on Thembani Bukula, oh man, wow, 15 years ago, I think. So, I think all of those are very, very interesting. So looking forward to that conversation from around 7:30. Good to hear from you as well on 011 883 0702 021 446 0567 and voice notes 072 702 1702.
The Money Show.
Business Unusual.
Well, Graham Codrington, the futurist and partner at Tomorrow Today, with us on the line. Graham, good evening. It's been a little while since we last spoke. Welcome back. You've been at the Dubai Futures Forum. I suppose it's a bit like me going to a journalist conference. You're as happy as you can be. You looked at some key themes, and one of them, I found this fascinating, is that focus is the new currency.
Yeah, good evening, Stephen. It is one of the highlights of my year, I'll be honest. Dubai is one of the only countries in the world that actually has a futures department in their government, and they have a cabinet member who is responsible for the future, Minister of the Future. And they invite the world's futurists to come and join them at that wonderful Museum of the Future in Dubai. And we spend a few days thinking about the future, looking at scenarios, and then the Dubai government produces a report, which they very generously make freely available. People can just do a search for it. This year's conference was held last week, and the report will come out early next year. But right at the beginning of the conference, one of the best sessions was actually by the chair of the Futures Foundation of Dubai. And instead of coming up with a list of predictions for the future, I mean, as futurists, we don't predict the future anyway. Nobody can do that. But instead of having a list of things that might happen in the next year or two, he brought out these 3 deep shifts that he believes is happening. And you're exactly right. The first one is focus is the new currency. That attention, our ability to obviously grab attention of the market, our ability to grab our own attention and focus it, whether that's on the to-do list in front of us or the work that needs to be done or the project we're trying to complete, or if it's just about making sure that our teams and our organizations are meaningfully directing their attention at the things that really matter. In a world of infinite inputs, protecting your focus is, I actually think, a key leadership skill, if nothing else. So I think he's right. And I think there's a lot of us maybe need to take some of the December break, not just to recover from the year, but to think about how we go into 2026 with a renewed attempt to focus.
It's so interesting because, I mean, so many things happen in a day. If someone asks me at the end, what did you do today? It actually gets quite hard to work out simply because you've done so many different things. And I'm sure it's the same for you.
At a personal level, this applies for sure. That I just think we can get into this. It's more than a hamster wheel because it isn't just about activity. It's about the scatteredness of what happens. And every time you dip into the news, I mean, there's 100 things going on at warp speed. But I think at an organizational level, I really do get a sense that people are not just sort of exhausted in the way you're normally exhausted in the last week of November. But I think we worn out by just this infinite change going on all around us. And we've got to almost get a systems level change in 2026. I think it's a good call to say, how do you get attention and focus and build it into your own life and your organization.
We're almost hyper-connected in a way. Another shift is that everyone and no one is an expert.
I like this one. I've used the line for a few years in my presentations where nobody is allowed to say, I don't know anymore. You can only say, I don't know yet. Or you can say, I don't know and I don't care to know, which is maybe one way to get your focus back. But we live in a world where any information, insight is available at your fingertips. AI pretends to have intelligence and give us even more information than we think. So at that level, everybody has the potential to have access to every piece of information and therefore can at least pretend or think that they are experts. On the other hand, there's a danger then that nobody is an expert. And I think we see this in the world around us where there is now a sense that people are questioning everything. They don't know who to believe. A video comes across your newsfeed. You can't be sure that that's real rather than just AI. And so there's a deep skepticism building. I think as a journalist and doing what you do, Stephen, this must be very concerning. How do we overcome this? And again, there's no answers, just questions. This is one of the defining shifts of our age. And in the next 2 or 3 years, I think is going to define our world quite dramatically. Everyone and no one is an expert right now. I think that's spot on.
And a little bit of information is a dangerous thing. And AI is reshaping trust and connection.
Now, this one was fascinating, and this one was where I took a little bit of a jump, because the actual way that the director of the Dubai Futures Forum phrased this is, AI will be your best friend. And I'm a little bit skeptical about AI. Not that it isn't powerful, but it isn't intelligent, in my opinion. It's a mimicry of intelligence, and I think it's best understood as a form of machine intelligence rather than a form of artificial human intelligence. But there are many people, and on our team we have a psychologist who does quite a lot of work on trying to understand this. There are many people who are beginning to see large language models and AI models as people, as somebody you can have a conversation with, that you can interact with, that you can be friends with, even so far as to say, I would say, you could fall in love with. And I think that there's a fascinating thing going on here. I don't want to be judgmental in the way I frame it, because we have an epidemic of loneliness. There's difficulties with mental health. And I think if any tool that would be useful to help us deal with loneliness and mental health issues would be good tools. And I think there is some good to be done there. But I think there's also danger down that path where we replace real human interaction with human machine interaction and no guardrails around it. So for me, the response is that we need to become more bionic rather than automate the world. We must augment the world, where human and machine sort of work alongside each other rather than replace each other. But I think it's a fascinating thought that maybe the next step for AI is a step into the relationship space rather than the business automation space. Fascinating.
Sure. Graham Codrington, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Futurist and partner at Tomorrow Today really does give you an indication of how the world is changing. 17 minutes after 7.
The Money Show.
Consumer Ninja.
Well, in the world of buying and selling things, there's one particular category that seems to really result in a lot of complaints. And actually, if you think about it, because of the nature of the product, it's not surprising. And I'm talking obviously about pre-owned, not pre-loved, but pre-owned cars. And in the last little while, there have been a few dealerships that have actually had judgments against them. So there were various resolutions, and people went to court and actually won. As a result, these dealerships have been ordered to pay hundreds of thousands of rand back to consumers. There's been some hefty fines. Wendy Nola is the person you turn to find out what on earth is going on in this situation. She's our consumer ninja. Wendy, good evening. What's going on here?
Hi, Stephen. Yes, so 4 separate higher court judgments in the space of just 3 months have made it crystal clear that judges will not tolerate dealerships selling vehicles with serious undisclosed, that's the key word, defects, and then washing their hands of the problem. In 2 of those cases, the dealerships had already lost at the National Consumer Tribunal. So those rulings have the same weight as a court ruling, right? And so these dealerships, so convinced were they that they were right, appealed those tribunal rulings and then lost again in the High Court, obviously at considerable extra expense to themselves. Just briefly, was Wingfield Motors in Cape Town sold a Ford Focus with a faulty clutch, refused responsibility, ordered to pay 568,000 plus a 50,000 rand fine. The appeal against that was dismissed. Lambons in the Free State, they ignored a National Consumer Commission compliance notice showing what the court called contemptuous disregard. They had a 200,000 rand penalty. Again, appeal dismissed. Avura Motors in Gauteng sold a Mazda BT50 with a latent defect, tried to blame the buyer because the warranty had expired. The High Court confirmed the dealerships that the dealership remained liable for the latent defects, and they were ordered to pay for the repairs plus 100,000 rand fine. Again, appeal dismissed. Santon Repo Cars was the latest, Stephen. They sold a VW Golf with undisclosed accident damage, tried to hide behind prescription. They said it's past 3 years. The court rejected that argument, and they must now pay the refund in full, 460,000 rand plus, again, 100,000 rand fine. Appeal dismissed.
I mean, the courts are sending a strong message here.
They are indeed, and the message is motor dealerships are not exempt from the Consumer Protection Act. If you cannot sell a car with defects that existed at the time of the sale, not disclose them, and then claim later that you didn't know, and essentially the buyer must sort it out themselves. The courts are also saying that the 3-year prescription argument won't automatically save a dealership if the consumer only discovered the defect later.
I mean, Wendy, you've been saying for years that we shouldn't blindly trust the salesperson. I mean, you've been saying that, I don't know, probably longer than you've been telling us to read the fine print. But people still buy a car online. You go online, you look at the pictures, you look at the history, you look at the kilometers, and then you buy it. I mean, it's surely a big problem.
I can't get my head around it, Stephen. I mean, I had a tandem career for 15 years as a motoring journalist, so I'm a petrol head, and I don't understand people who do that. For one thing, to not even want to see the car and drive it, for me, is crazy. But it's become the norm. Let's do everything online. Let's see this, go onto one of the big sites, see this dealership listing, start engaging over WhatsApp or whatever, see a few photos of video. I mean, how much can you hide in those? And then, do the finance and arrange for the courier to send you your car. What could go wrong? Well, every day, and I'm not exaggerating, every day I hear from someone that did that, and in some cases the car broke down the first time they drove it. And now you have a battle royal on your hands to get justice. It really is become quite a critical issue.
You've been talking to people about it as well.
Yeah, so I spoke to 2 independent vehicle checking companies about what they've picked up with the checks. And I said, okay, give me your October stats. So First Check, which does VIN-based online history reports, you give the car that you're intending to buy or you're wanting to buy into their website. You pay, I think it's just under 150 Rand for full checks, everything from mileage to accident history, etc. They found last month that 36% of the cars they checked had accident damage or insurance claims on record, and 24% had rolled back odometers. This is a big issue.
Wow.
The industry calls it a haircut. So if you want the industry to think you know what you're doing, say, has this car had a haircut? One Land Cruiser had 270,000 kilometers removed. 270,000.
Wow.
Only 40% of cars on those VIN checks came back completely clean. And then View for You, which does physical inspections on cars and background checks, preferably before someone buys, examined almost 250 vehicles for private buyers in October. 167 of them had accident repairs, and at least 10 had haircuts, manipulated mileage. So these are numbers that you really need to hold close to you when you are in the market for a used car, because the chances of something going wrong are fairly high. Here's how View for You founder Malcolm Cavey put it.
When you saw salesmen are prowling on people, they don't disclose the proper mileage. Then they say to them, no, it is the right mileage. We'll send you the service book, take the car. By the time you get a service book, it's too late. So get the service, verify the service history before you drive that car off the floor to ensure that you got the right mileage. If it does not have service history, be very skeptical. I would say don't take it. Number 2 would be the accidents history. Dealers often hide this. If you suspect any rework done, do not believe them when they say it's just a small touch-up. Those small things often lead to bigger things. The more you dig, the more you find out that, shucks, this car is actually in a serious accident. Do not die for their pressure. Do not take their pressure. Do not believe anything they say. As we at View for You like to say, never trust any dealer. There are good dealers out there. There are amazing dealers. They are great, but it does not mean that you must trust them.
Founder of View for You, Malcolm Cavey there. Okay, Wendy, very quickly, obviously you need to check the car yourself. You need to have it looked. Do the banks that finance cars have a role to play here?
That's a very good issue. I believe they do. And I've asked them a couple of years ago, why don't you insist that dealers do these background checks and provide the reports before they finance the car, just like they insist that, you have insurance on the car before they finance it. This single rule change would force dealerships to clean up their stock overnight, because finance drives most used car sales, right? Most of them are finance. And at the moment, the banks are indirectly funding a lot of consumer misery. I will be pushing this issue because, a few years ago, you might have argued that the checks that were available were a little bit inconsistent, but that's not the case anymore with the sites that are available. So, I can't see why, how they can continue to justify not asking for those reports before they approve the finance.
Wendy Nolap, thank you very much indeed. Your consumer ninja on The Money Show tonight.
The Money Show.
Shapeshifters.
23 minutes to 8 the time. Well, you will have heard so many times on this show and others on how our electricity system is changing, how we're moving from one operator in Eskom to a proper electricity trading market. You know how complex and difficult some of these issues are. There are lots of different factors you've got to consider. There are lots of different parties. And one of the people who's kind of in the middle of this, and I mean it's the middle of a major transition, is your Shapeshifter tonight. He is the chair of the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, and he's Thembani Bukula. Thembani, I've reported on you for many years. It's wonderful to actually talk to you as our Shapeshifter. Thanks for the time. Good evening.
Good evening, Stephen. Good evening to your listeners as well.
From what I can see online, you started your tertiary at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and you studied a BSc Engineering. I couldn't see if it was an electricity qualification or not. Were you keen on engineering, or were you already keen on sort of the electricity side of it?
So I did my BSc in electrical engineering at the University of Natal. Further to that, I did my diploma in engineering business management at the Warwick University and my master's in maths, engineering and science at UNISA. So I was keen on the electrical supply industry.
What was it about it that was so interesting? And I can imagine the technical nature of it. I think you can sort of drown yourself in it. It must be quite interesting. Was it that? Was there something else about, making electrons move that you found interesting?
I think let's start from the fact that I come from a small village called Kofimvaba, and in that village, electricity was not something that we had a lot of. So I think my interest was in knowing about this commodity that makes life easy, and yet it is not so easily available.
And it must have had such a huge impact on your community when there was electricity available. And I mean, it was one of the parts of the country that had to wait quite a long time.
Yes, it did. And I think it changed a lot of lives. I mean, people no longer had to take a bus every day to just go and buy meat that they must consume that evening. And then the following day they have to go and buy. They could now store meat, reduce their cost. So the quality of life just by providing electricity improved. I mean, kids could play at night and study. Those who were studying under proper lighting, not the candlelight or paraffin lamp. So it was a big contributor to the change in the quality of life of the people.
One of your first jobs was at a company called Yelland Engineering, and I smiled slightly because there's a Yelland you probably have to deal with quite often nowadays.
Yes, it was actually his family business. His dad was my boss at Yelland Engineering.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Gee, so you have a long association with the family then. Sheesh.
Yes.
So when I first started reporting on you, and I can't remember the exact year, but it would have been after the first bout of load shedding in 2008, and you were the member for electricity at NERSA for a long time, and that meant you were the person in charge of that. And that's quite you kind of would have found yourself as in the spotlight because so many things were happening around it. How did you end up in that position? How did you end up as a regulator, I suppose, is what I'm really asking.
Stephen, I think my first contact with the National Energy Regulator was when I wanted to do technical audits for them for a few of the transmission lines and substations that they wanted to look at. And out of that, I think they were appointing the first board of the National Energy Regulators, we know it NERSA. And it was out of that interaction with NERSA that they then nominated me to be appointed as the regulator member that would be primarily responsible for electricity.
How did you find the job? I mean, it's very technical. We sort of would see that person in the context of making decisions about power prices. It's a complex formula. I often wonder, I mean, you must spend hours at night just assessing all of the numbers to get it right. It's very kind of fiddly. It must be very interesting as well.
It is. I think there's the part that is really the science and the accounting and the economics, but there's also then the other part that is more of an art. I think as much as the regulation, we may want to look at it as that you look at a lot of numbers and a lot of graphs, and but there's a part where you also, because you are predicting things that are going to happen in the future that you also don't have 100% certainty around them. You also have an art of how do I make sure that even if the future I'm picturing is not exactly what it's going to be, but it doesn't fall far off from that. But I also have to say that during the times of load shedding, as much as there were many other things that were predicted that would happen, when they happened at a pace that was much faster than what we had anticipated, and we also had a utility that was also not operating at optimal levels. So things got really complicated.
Yeah, I mean, very difficult as well. And I imagine there must have been moments where it was probably quite uncomfortable. If we can, I'd like to talk a little bit about sort of the changes we're seeing now. So there's a review around how we put together the electricity price. That's kind of out of your hands in a way. You regulate on what you're given to regulate. But how do you see your role in all of that? Because, I mean, I imagine for me, it would be kind of foolish to do a whole review without including NERSA in it somewhere. And yet your job is to be independent and to basically make a judgment on what you're asked to make a judgment on. I mean, you're a bit like a judge. This is the law. You have to follow that.
Stephen, the matter of pricing, as I said, that, I mean, there's accounting, there's economics, and there's engineering in it. And when you have to determine the pricing, you have to consider all of those fields. And in what we are going to do now that we are moving towards the market, what is being hoped would happen is that when we have other players that want to sell their product, the tendency when a market is created is that producers try and find the least possible way of producing their product, which then results in the least possible cost of the product. What our function is going to be going forward as a regulator is to ensure that the playing fields are leveled. We do not necessarily have an entity that has the advantage over the other. Unfortunately, in our case in South Africa, we're still going to have Eskom being a dominant player for at least the next 10 years. So our function is still going to be that one of mitigating that dominance or dominant power of Eskom and ensuring that the other players that are not dominant are given the same rules to play under, the same field and the same parameters to operate under.
So just to be clear, you do believe, I mean, I believe this, you do believe that the introduction of competition will bring electricity prices down. It will make electricity prices lower at some point.
It should, Stephen. When we get to a point where there's efficiencies in the way that you run your operations, then there is no reason why the electricity prices would not go down. We also have a change in the technologies that are being used that also will contribute to the reduction in the cost and therefore make the electricity prices kind of reduce from the levels that we're seeing.
So, I mean, there might be a moment where Eskom, for various reasons, maybe because it's such a big coal-fired producer of power, just can't compete with other operators. Do you have to take that into account, that we do kind of need Eskom or something like it, even if it may just never be able to really compete on price? I mean, that's quite a difficult situation to have to deal with, where you kind of need it as an emergency or a baseload supplier or something. And yet other newer plants may just be able to provide electricity more cheaply. I mean, you need to keep Eskom going in that circumstance, and yet it won't be competitive.
That's partly true, that we have to keep Eskom there going. But I think one of the reasons why we will keep Eskom going is because we also haven't got to a stage where the alternative technologies are able to supply power 24/7. The sun only shines during the day, the wind blows when it wants to blow, and therefore you need something that can then provide that base power for when there's no wind and when there's no sun. And I think that's the advantage that Eskom has. The disadvantage with the plants that they have is that they are not the sort of plants that you can, turn on and off, and when you need them, you need to be running them all of the time for them to be able to produce power. It's not like you can, to start a coal-fired power station takes a few hours, and therefore we have to accept that there is going to be that part of the inefficiency in our system if we want to have continuous power available. But I think as the technologies change and as the Eskom improves its own technologies, I'm sure we will get to a point where we have a way of adjusting the output of the coal-fired power stations to align with what is required and not to just have them idling because you can't switch them off.
I want to ask you to make a prediction about power prices and when they'll come down. And as I do it, I realize that this cannot be this will be more of the art you spoke about rather than a science. Do you have any idea of when that might happen? You may not even be able to answer because of the position you hold as chair of NERSA, but do you think in 10 years, for example, we will stop having such big power price increases, or maybe 15 years? I won't hold you to it either way because I realize it's an impossible question.
Stephen, I think as the regulator, we've made this a pronouncement, so I'm not speaking out of terms, and I think even Eskom itself has made this realization that gone are the times and the days where we would have increases that are double digits. The increases that we're going to have in electricity have to be related to inflation and the single digit, and there's less the part where we also had to add a percentage or two. If you looked at the determinations, they're already indicating that the increases are going to be in your 5-6% range. And yes, the other part that there is that your other technologies like your your solar PV and wind have had the reduced costs. So there may be periods within the next 2-3 years, periods where we would have cheap power. Say during the day, we would have cheaper power because it is cheaply produced or produced at the lowest cost by your solar PV plants, and then yes, you may have it at higher rates when the sun sets, and you have to start kicking in the Eskom generators and the diesel generators. But we will have that, and other countries have already experienced that. In Australia, for instance, during the day, consumers are encouraged to do anything and everything they need to do with power and pay nothing for that power that they use during the day because of this advantage that has been brought by your solar PV systems with the lowest cost production. It
is amazing how the world's changed, isn't it? Your shapeshifter this evening is Thembani Bukula, the chair of NERSA. He's with us for another few minutes. It's 10 minutes now to 8.
The Money Show, Stephen Grootes, is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud host of the Africa Impact Matters series podcast. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The Money Show.
Shapeshifters.
8 minutes now to 8 the time. Your shapeshifter this evening, the chair at NERSA, the energy regulator, Thembani Bukula. Thembani, as NERSA, you've had a bit of a rough ride. There was the mistake in the tariff application. You apologized in Parliament for that, and in other places it was a very difficult time for you. Does NERSA have the resources, the people with the qualifications, the facilities and all of that kind of thing that it actually needs? I know some parts of government, Stats SA is a good example, doesn't get the money that it needs, and yet we expect a very high sort of level of work from it. Do you have what you need?
NERSA has the staff and the competencies that are required for what we have. But going forward, as we go into what the market would require, whether we need to understand the day ahead, intraday, and the balancing requirements, NERSA has to create those skills. But I would want to take you back to a time when we had no renewables and NERSA was running the refit program. At that stage, there was no association. Nobody knew as much as we now know, and we built that capability from nothing to where it is now, well recognized, and also really respected across many areas. Our solar PV, wind, and hydro industries. We also believe that even with the market and what is going to be required for NERSA going forward, we are going to get to that stage by building these resources. At this stage, I think there's no South African entity that can also claim to have all that is required to run the market. We are all going to learn, but we have a good history and a good reputation that we've done it with renewables, and we'll be able to do it with the market. And we had done it with the nuclear and many other things that had happened in this country before. I am confident that we'll be able to do this.
There are also other countries that have done this. Some of them, I remember the California power crisis. Some of them made huge mistakes there, and some of them got it right. There are lots of places to learn from.
Yes, we have that wealth of mistakes that have been made and successes, but we then have to customize them and make them fit into our own environment. We have power stations that we have just built and that have to still run, so we may have to have some artificial market running around them, but that's what we have, and we are going to make it work. But what must happen at the end of it all is that we must get the lowest possible production of electricity, and therefore the lowest costs for the consumers of electricity. If this market and this change is not going to achieve that, then we still have to carry on tweaking it till we get to this desired answer of the lowest possible cost of electricity.
There's been often, a question has come, when would load shedding end? And load shedding has ended, and it's ended some time ago now. And I know people have been very careful to not say it'll never happen again, and I understand why, whether it's the electricity minister or Eskom. Let me put the question to you in this way. As the chair of NERSA, are you comfortable that our electricity network, the whole thing, is just a lot more resilient than it was? And it would seem to me very unlikely that we would have load shedding again.
I have to say that from what I see and the reports that we get provided, I am comfortable that load shedding is behind us. But what we must not do is get to that stage where we relax and we don't do the things that got us to be into load shedding. We must continue doing the things that got us out of load shedding. And if we continue doing that, then yes, load shedding is behind us. Load shedding will be a very foreign word to the kids that are growing up now.
If I may, Thembani, normally at this point in a Shapeshifter interview, we ask our guest what they do for fun, what they do to relax. And I'm going to ask you, but I must just tell you that it comes with a rule, because so many people say, when I have time off, I spend the time with my family and I jog. So you're not allowed to say those two things. I don't know if maybe you're the captain of your local skydiving team or something like that. What do you do to relax when you get a moment off?
I'm not a captain of a skydiving team, but I do go boating. So I relax by getting into the Germiston Lake or Val Dam and just let my boat drift till the sun sets.
Do you mean yacht under sail, or do you mean with an outboard motor or something?
Just a small boat, not a yacht. I said Germiston Lake, it only takes small boats, not yachts.
But is it sails?
Pardon?
Is it sails or is it a motor?
It's a motorized boat.
Okay, all right, yeah. It must, and I imagine you do feel that you're getting away from it all.
Yes, it's right in the middle of nowhere, and no load shedding and worries when you're in the middle of the dam.
Mm-hmm. And you can throw the phone in the water if you need to.
Exactly.
And traveling, you go, Koffumvaba, I imagine, might be a place you go to. Are there any other particular places you like to go to?
I do like the places around the coast, like your Cape San Francisco is one of my favorite places to visit.
Well, Thembani Bukula, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you. I really do appreciate the time. As I say, I've reported on you for many years, so it's great to sort of get a different side of you, if you like, and to be our shapeshifter. The chairman of the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, Thembani Bukula. Sir, thank you very much indeed for your time on The Money Show tonight.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud host of the Africa Impact Matters series podcast. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Well, U.S. markets turning positive tonight. Interest rate expectations are part of it, I suspect. The Dow Jones is up 0.9%. The Nasdaq is up 0.94%. The S&P 500 is up 0.86%. Of course, a lot going to happen over the next 24 hours, and I've been watching with a lot of interest the latest claims to come from Vusimuzi Kat Matlala. The claim he says that he gave 500,000 rand to Becky Cele, the former police minister. I have to keep reminding myself that this is untested evidence. We don't know if any of this is true. There is still so much to come from these inquiries, and I have a sneaking suspicion we're still going to be watching them in 2 or 3 years' time. Well, we will be with you tomorrow. Aubrey is next. It's 8 o'clock.